Tuesday night, the 31st of December 1985, New Year's Eve, and I'm, I suppose, ag cód díocht that Ned Walsh is a Garmanstown. Ned lives fairly near the school in Garmanstown, and I'd just like to ask Ned, first of all, we'll say his childhood, rather than talking about today, we'll go back to yesterday or maybe a few days further back. Ned, going to school and I think, you grew up near here, did you?
Actually, I did, only just down across the fields, you 2 fields down there.
Yeah, farming, were you?
Farming, the father was a farmer that had it. Of course, the grandson is there now, you see, and he's
carrying on the tradition, yeah. You went to school in the local school, I suppose, Garmanstown.
I did in Garmanstown School. That was the only one I ever went to, so that's left me as it is.
Grand, most people anyway.
Yeah.
It stood you well, says you.
I did, I had a good teacher.
Grand.
I had a good teacher, Peter Marsh.
What was it like when you started going to school? Can you remember your first few days?
Well, there is a something that I could remember. I suppose it was probably my first day, but maybe I mightn't know right to talk about it. The actual fact was that I had to go to the toilet sometime during the day, and I went out to a little toilet. It was at the back of the school altogether, and I had an awful bother there, which it was the custom at that time. Youngsters had a belly band. I must call it a belly band because I don't know what it was called.
Something we say like the Spanish belt, like that kind of thing, is it? Keep you in?
I understood later in years that mothers put it on babies to keep their stomach small and tidy. The food they were using was too poor and it caused the stomach to enlarge, you see. But I had to loosen out this and put me to my best to do it anyway. But however, I suppose I succeeded and got on. So that's it. Of course, then again, you see, I had to struggle the way up, and I wasn't what you call a good scholar going to school. Poor Peter, he knew I should be good and all the rest of it, and sometimes he was nice to me and sometimes he wasn't. But one thing about him, he was a good teacher.
That was Peter Marsh, you said?
Peter Marsh, yeah. His wife was there, they were married, she was the teacher in the girls' school. And the 2 schools were amalgamated afterwards, and the 2 of them were together in the one school where I was going to, in the school around the corner.
Just at the corner?
Just at the corner.
That's right, there's still a plaque on the wall there, Garmanstown Male
There
School.
is, the stone, that was over the door of the schoolhouse there, you see. And when it was sold and changed, this stone was taken down and put on the top of the wall there, and it's still there.
But grand to see that it's still there anyway.
It is, of course, you know,
No.
the old relic.
Yeah. Getting back to the school days, we'll say the pals that you had in school, or what kind of games would you play during the day, or did you play any game?
We did, and we played everything. And one of the games we played was football, but we'd have only an old quarter solid or a tennis ball or something that way, and we played it on the road. And I saw poor Peter Master come out of the gate, and he certainly left us overtime playing the game. Everyone half met, trying to kick the little ball, you see, and put out the goal. And the next thing, of course, we had the hand clap. We had to come in, but when we were passing, we saw poor Peter, and he smiled in a way. He was a great sport, a great gale, in that way, you see. But then we played games there that you wouldn't hear of at all now. We used to play trance, was one of the games we used to play. And there was another one, burn ball. We played burn ball there, which caused more excitement than the football.
Do you want to tell me about that? Go on.
Whatever number it'd be playing it, you see. We all wore caps then, you see. Yeah. And we'd all put down our cap along at the butt of the wall, you see. You know, and open it out. And if we didn't have a cap then, we had to get 3 or 4 stones and put them standing around and make a square of them, you see.
Right, yeah.
And you stood back then 5 or 6 yards with the ball in your hand, and you threw it well and good if you could get into a cap or a box or whatever it was. And if it went into one, and then whoever that belonged to ran for the ball and picked it up and threw it after, if they could hit somebody, You see, this was the game. They had to go back. But the scare of it was something terrible. You didn't want to go throwing the ball. So there were several. We had cat. Another great game was cat. A small little bit of a stick, pointed at the two ends. Ran it to a point at the two ends. And
about 6 inches long, wasn't it?
Oh, it couldn't put about 3 or 4 inches long.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. And you had another stick then, and you tapped this and the end of it, and it hopped up, and well and good if you could hit it 20 yards away. And whoever you're playing against then, you gave them so many jumps to get to this. And if they didn't do it, you see, you put each jump was a point for you, you see. You got up
something like bowling, but on a small scale.
Well, I suppose something that way. I don't know much about bowling, you see, but that was the case. But we enjoyed ourselves.
Some of the lads that will say that you palled around it, I'm sure, like, sort of, a lot of them moved off anyway, didn't they?
Oh, God, God, they did. So they're practically all gone. God, I think that I know of there's only one man in the locality alive now by myself. Paddy Murphy, down in Gormerstown.
Yeah.
He was in next class to me or something that way. He was even worse than me to study or learn anything. But he's still alive. My chum in the same class as me in school, Father Pat Shine, he did for a number of years, but he used to disgrace me. He was like lightning. He was ordained in Maynooth after passing everything up along till there, you see. He was ordained in Maynooth.
A natural bent for the learning, had he?
Oh yes, no doubt in the world. Trouble, learning was no trouble to him. I remember Peter Marsh telling the story. We were great friends afterwards, Peter Marsh and myself. And I remember him telling the story about one day when the inspector was in there. And there was 3 or 4 or 5 in the class. And he was going over them all. And he came to Father Pat Shine. And Father Pat Shine was only 4 feet so much. He was very small, youngster, you know, this kind of thing. And the inspector came along to him, the religious inspector now at that time. God, I think he was a Father Power, as a matter of fact, but I may be wrong. He came along to Father Pat Shine, and he asked him questions and this kind of thing. And no matter what he asked him, Pat Shine had it answered immediately. This kind of thing. It was no trouble to him. What's your name? He says to Paddy Shine. Pat Shine, Father. You really do shine, he says.
Right, Ned. After school, Ned, you know, when you sort of went home in the evening at 3 o'clock or 3:30, you had to help around the farm, I suppose, had you?
I did when I grew up, but I was sure I was going to school for years, and maybe when I'd come home in the evening and have me dinner, I might have to go to Affinity for messages for the mother or something like that, some message to do here or there or this kind of a thing. Maybe on the other hand I'd have to go out helping the father doing some. I needn't tell you I wasn't able to do much when I was very young, but then later on in years I used to have to go out and look after the cows, put in hay and straw into the bales for the cows that night when they'd come in and this kind of a thing. Oh, there was plenty of work to be done, I can tell you.
Yeah, the work at that stage with horses, like, you know, you used horses, did you?
Oh, we did. There was a pair of horses there always, you know, and that kind of a thing. The father did, at that time, he did all the ploughing and that kind of a thing, the ploughing and tilling and setting and all the rest of it, you see. But there was one thing in my memory. I was only 8 years when I had to go out binding, and that was a job to be remembered.
Yeah. Something that you wouldn't like to be facing, I suppose, to have in the back, was it?
God, it was terrible. It was terrible on a youngster of 8 or 9 years to go out binding corn, and they have machines to do it all now.
It's very easy. But the women helped at the binding as well, did they?
Oh, they did. I remember my mother out binding.
Yeah.
I remember my mother, and I remember my sister, and I remember women up from Ardfinnan then binding, earning their higher binding. Yeah. While the binding lasted in the locality, these women were out day after day after day binding. You said it to kill them, but it was better they were getting with it.
Well, it was healthy, I suppose, to be outdoors
It
anyway.
was, and of course after the first day you were over, you were stiff out the second day, you know. You couldn't store, your back was stiff and every bit of you was stiff, but for the next day then you were loosened up your muscles.
You're away.
Yes.
You're away. No, that was, we'll say, like for the corn. Would you
Yes.
have grown, you know, potatoes, the usual crops, I suppose, potatoes?
Oh
and-
God, yes, there was potatoes and turnips and mangels and all the rest of this, and as these came in and they were turning one after the other, we had to do our bit of a share on them.
Yeah.
You know, once we grew up to 10 or 12 or 14 years, you see.
But there was more help that time to work, we'll say. Like, you know, when you were a young lad, it was easy to get people to work on the land, was it? You know,
It was, and people were really plentiful. There was no other work, you might say, only to work on the land. There was, of course, the one factories in our Finland, but the people that worked in the factory, they didn't come out farming
no.
until they had to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't by choice, as you...
Oh, it certainly wasn't by choice that they came out
Yeah.
at all, not by any means. And I know a lot of them came out at a time when the factory was going awful bad, and it wasn't for work they came out, but looking
Yeah.
for something to eat for
Yeah,
themselves and
yeah.
their families.
No, it wasn't all work, though. Like, we'll say, how would you do during the week then, when you, as you got older, we'll say teenager or a young man? Would you have something in the house, coordinate, or would you have car playing or what?
We'd go off to a neighbour's house in the evenings, and that there'd be an old game of cards on, or there'd be some bit of entertainment, depending on the house you went to. There was one house now that's just here beside us now, where there was a game of cards. I suppose it hardly missed a night that there wasn't a game of cards there. 9 at the table, 3 threes playing, and if there wasn't, there was 8 there. Maybe there might be one missing. And this kind of thing. And this was nice. It was a hard game of cards, you know, and you had to be
Yeah.
pretty good to
And
play
where
at
was that?
25. Here at Burke's, Mr. Burke's. Ellie Lonson's trust to us always, you know. This
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
That's the house, we said the round is across the
Yes,
house, and you know more.
yes, just now. There was another house then, up the laneway further down, Keeves. Oh, Keeves were their names properly, you
Yeah.
see. Keeves we called them, you know, and that kind of thing. And there would be a bigger crowd there. 'Tis often I saw up to maybe 40 fellas in there.
Aye.
And poor Mrs. Keefe, she was a great woman to make a living. Now, give her due, she was great. She had nothing there. The husband, she was married there, of course. The husband died rather young and left her with nothing, only a big family.
Right.
She used to go around the country with ass and cart, collecting eggs and fowl and this kind of thing, and bring them to the markets in Care or Clonmel and try to make a few shillings on them. She did. The next thing was she started a little shop in one of the rooms, and the next
Right.
thing was she was doing a big business. She'd have anything from a dozen to up to 40 fellas in there at night, and they all having their orders. Bring home the bread to me, bring
Yeah.
home the salt to me, bring home
Candles or whatever.
candles, everything else that, you know, all the families around, they all had someone there in the night to bring home the messages, you know, and this kind of, she did a grand business there. And it happened that some years before that, the county council gave presses for making cider.
My God, that was...
And her husband was one of the men that got a press, a grinder and press. And they made the cider. But she made it when the husband died, more than the husband did. She made it. She made cider for all the neighbours around also, if they wanted to have it made there. A lot of them had fruit trees then,
Yes, yeah.
apple trees.
Yeah.
And they used to go to her to make cider, you see, and this kind of thing. But eventually she used to buy the big orchards of apples and crabs and all the rest of it in the locality and make the cider herself.
Aye.
And she had a fine big house there they called the Barn. It was a farmer's place some years before that, where they called the Barn.
Yeah.
And I was in there one evening in the winter time, and I could easily count up to 20 big 40-gallon barrels of cider.
Maturing away.
All maturing, and she racked this and cleaned it. It was terrific with her. It was great.
Yeah.
But
Would she sell that then in the shop? Was it kind of she
not in the shop.
Oh.
Not in the shop, but in the kitchen. It was a terrible fine big house, big kitchen there, you know, and this kind of a thing. And the lads, if they had a stool or a chair, they sat down, and if they didn't, they stayed standing, or they sat up on the table, or they sat somewhere else, you know, and they made themselves, they sat on the stairs, and
Anyway.
anywhere they could get some place to sit down. And every one of them then, maybe one or two of them, three of them, Mrs., give me a quarter cider.
Yeah.
She was charged 4p for the quarter cider.
Yeah.
And some of the lads going in there, the quarter cider would make them drunk, you know, the stuff she had.
Yeah.
I remember there was one guy in there, Finnan, and he was cycle up there specially for the drink of cider, for the quarter cider. He'd sit down on the footpath in front and get the quarter cider and drink it. It was good, you know.
Good stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And was the fact that there were 30 or 40 lads there, discussing the things that went on locally and that kind of, was it?
Well, now everyone had their own chat there. And if you want to hear, I'll tell you a story about it.
Yeah.
There was an old man that lived there. I won't mention his name now. He lived there and died there. But he was a cross, contrary kind of a man.
Aye.
And he sat in the corner at the fire every night.
Under the hob, I suppose.
Under the hob, if you like to say, under the chimney.
Yeah.
But he walked with his stick, and he always had the chin down on the two hands on the stick, like this.
Resting on top of the stick, yeah.
The chin resting on the hands on the top of the stick.
Yeah.
That was his position. He scarcely ever stood there for that all night.
Observing everything that went on, of course.
Listening to everything, but no word. Talk to no one. So there was a little lassie there. She would be a granddaughter now of Mrs. Keefe, and she would be 2 to 3 years old. And this night she had a little kitten going around on her hands. You see, and she petting the kitten and all this. Next thing was, this fella sitting at the fire, he piped up, "Ready? I give you a penny for the cat."
Yeah.
"No." "Ready? I give you a penny for the cat. Now look, you'll have a penny to yourself now."
Yeah.
"No." "Ready? I give you 2p for the cat." "No." "What do you want a cat for?" somebody else asked.
Yeah.
"I want to throw my fella across the fire."
More than broke out, I suppose.
"I should by God, don't man, it is well for you 20 years ago I met you."
Very good. Very good.
It's a good lad.
Yeah, you're bound to have, like, where you'd have 30 or 40 lads, even 10 lads, you know, you'd have a bit of chat. Someone would bound to be blackguard, like, you know.
No, there was scarcely ever what you call blackguarding. No, there was never, there was only one incident that I saw wasn't nice there.
Yeah.
There was one night there, and as I told you, she had a shop. And these 2 local girls came in there and up to the shop. And Mrs. Keefe and all her family went up talking to these couple of girls in the shop.
Yes.
And at the same time, the kitchen became full of fellas. And they all waiting for the cider. This kind of thing. Now, she had a fine house. Very well stocked with everything, especially the kitchen. She had a big table, at least 7 feet long, and I'd say 3.5 feet wide. A mighty big kitchen table. She had this. She also had a dresser. The old-time Irish dresser, which stood, I suppose, 7 feet high too, and 4 or 4.5 feet wide, with
Jugs
3 or 4 shelves on it. Now, every shelf in that was filled with cups and saucers and plates and dishes. There was 2 drawers in it filled with knives and forks and tablecloths, and 2 presses then underneath filled with delf again of different kinds. Here were all the lads around the kitchen, they all sitting down and they were talking and this kind of thing and so on. But some couple of the lads stood up anyway. And they took out the table from the wall and put it out in the middle of the floor. And they started off then, and they took down every dish and plate and cup and saucer and mug and jug and everything else, teapots, kettles. Oh, first of all, they laid on 2 lovely white tablecloths, linen tablecloths.
Yeah.
They were a lovely job. That was the first thing they laid on. They had that big dresser, stripped down, bare. And they weren't satisfied with that. There was a pot of stirabout at the fire.
Yes.
And they started off, and they emptied this pot of stirabout up onto every dish and
On top
plate
of
was
the
there. Now,
Yeah.
every one of them stood there now, and no, of course there was only a couple of them to blame for this now, you see.
Yeah.
But that was all right. Sometime later on, maybe a half an hour or an hour later, the girls left the shop, and Mrs. Keefe and her 3 or 4 daughters came down. And of course they had to stop and look when they came inside the door. You see, Mrs. Keefe put her hand down in a bag she carried in front of her and took up the snuff box and...
Good whiff of it, yes.
Yeah, a good whiff of snuff. Boys, she says, you wouldn't like it to be done on your own mother. That's all in the world, she said.
Enough said.
Yeah. She told the daughters get the gallons and all the rest of it. They were cider flying around the house in 5 minutes' time. That's all was one.
Yeah. It was harmless fun done away, but
in a way,
naughty.
It was an ugly thing. I suppose that's nearly the worst you could say for it.
Yeah, but lucky enough they didn't break him anyway.
Oh, there was no damage like that done.
Yeah.
There was no damage actually like that done. That was as a matter of fact, the laying out of the delf wouldn't be so bad. But when they went to the pot of stirabout and the stride, they put them washing. They gave them an hour, 2 hours work. Washing all was there, you see.
Yeah.
But there was another little incident then, which was really funny. It was a wet evening. It had been an awful wet evening now until about 7 o'clock. And a few of the fellas gathered in, including yours truly, and sat at the fire. But there was one fella there anyway, and he couldn't stop cackling, you see.
Yeah.
And he was sitting in near the hob. And all of a sudden he put in his hand into the black soot, do you see?
Yeah.
And plastered the hand all over the other lad's face.
Yeah, right.
But as he did it, he flew to the door and out, and the door was locked, do you see, and he couldn't come in again. So the next thing was, anyway, he got the shafts of the press, the cider press.
Yes.
Was outside, and he put him up against the door and got a chain somewhere then and tied the door to the shafts with the chains so that it couldn't be opened inside either.
Yeah.
But that was all right. The next thing was she had a little pony's car, a little dray car at the time for doing the shopping and that kind of a thing. And he caught this and he galloped around the stone yard, you know, as hard as he could and caused all the racket he could, you see.
Yeah.
All the lads jumped up to the window to see what was going on, you see, and that's all they had to see, of course. But in any case, it was time to go home. And the door was locked, bolted, tied.
Yeah.
And they couldn't go out. Come on now, lads, said poor Mrs. Keefe, and you'll give him a right drop. She says, I'll leave you out the back window. Poor Mrs. Keefe went into the shop.
Yes.
And she had a window to the back of the shop out into the garden. And she raised this window and stood beside it herself, holding it up. And the first of the lads went along to go out the window, you see. And as he did, he gave some little bit of a plunge. And Mrs. Keefe had 2 shelves across full of stuff in the shop, you see. Fortunate enough, I suppose they were only all empty boxes,
yeah,
just showing off in this kind of thing. But in any case, this lad was going out, and he hit the first shelf with his back, and down came a good share of the boxes. You see, so when he saw the damage he had done, he made another plunge, and the boxes hit the one of them. Down comes the whole blue and down on top of poor Mrs. Keefe.
That's all, yeah.
So he went out. Of course, there was no hair. That was just a funny incident.
Exactly. Yeah. But I want to ask you, that was the Keefes, and like in the shop. That you'd have done some shopping there yourself at night when you were
we did. Everyone that was going in there, and they all smoking. They all got their cigarettes for the day, following days, and this kind of a thing. Oh God, yes, man. In that way, she did a terrific trade there, you know.
It was a kind of, I suppose, immediately after supper at night, you'd be going to Keefes.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Oh yes.
And I have now turning to the other side. I leave that inside of the Claheen side. The sailors. The sailors hill. Tell me about the sailor. Who or what was he at all?
The sailor, Connors was his name. Shawnee Connors was his name.
Yeah.
Well, Shawnee Connors was an old man when I knew him, and I was only a youngster. Do you see? But he was a peculiar man. He was I don't know. You couldn't say he was an oddity, but he was a peculiar man, just to say, that kind of a thing. And he lived on his own in a small little house just down the road there a bit, you see.
Yeah.
And he was a regular visitor down at our place, you see. He used to go down to the mother for a sup of milk and a gallon of water and this kind of thing, you see. He'd be down maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And this kind of, he used to go off around the fields gathering sticks for fire and this kind of a thing.
Was he, was he away, did you tell me one time, was he in the army or something at one stage?
Oh, he was in the army.
Yeah.
He was in the army.
The big English army, was it?
In the English army, yes. And he spent a lot of time out foreign, but where exactly he was, I don't know. I know he was foreign, you see, and that kind of thing. And I'm going to tell you this much, that one of the things that my mother held for him was a pair of 6-chamber revolvers.
That he brought home?
That he brought home with him out of the army.
No one knew they were there, so you?
Oh, no one knew she had him or that kind of thing at all, you see.
Yeah.
But he also had a shotgun. And, you know, he was a peculiar person. And a lot of the local lads, especially the lads from the village of Artfinnan, you see, they just try to have a bit of a lark at him and this kind of a thing. And they used to annoy him. But fast enough, he used to put them going out of it because he'd bring out the double barrel and blast it. And if he didn't have the proper cartridges for it, he'd fill it with wheat, grains of wheat.
Go on.
Charge it, muzzle load it, you see, with the grains of wheat.
Scatter them.
Yes. He was dangerous, you know.
That'd put an end to the Blackguard and all the same.
Oh, it'd put a stop to it quick.
Very quick,
and if they did any Blackguard, it was from a distance.
Right.
They didn't do him much harm,
that's how it got the name, I suppose, the Sailor's Hill or the Sailor's
Hill. That's how it got the name of the Sailor's Hill.
And were his people there before him?
Oh, they were. His father was there before him. His father lived there before him, and he also had an uncle. But I don't know anything about him, really. Yeah. What I do know about him is that he built the wall down along beside the road here and outside of Fairfield here. He built that wall, and below where I was reared, there was how many? There was 4 stalls there. You'd hardly know what they were now. Yeah. They were buildings of about 9 or 10 feet round.
Round buildings.
And stood about that high. The stacks of corn. The stacks of corn were made on top of these, and was kept there for the spring threshing.
Right.
No, this was the idea. They were perfectly safe from everything. They were up from the ground and everything else.
Was that sorry interrupting you? Was that unusual for this year? I know you see it in the west of Ireland. Like, was it something that some of your relatives, you know, an idea that they brought from somewhere else?
No, it was a popular thing, but there was only some families that did it. Whether it was that they weren't able to build these, do you know that they hadn't the money. Not the neck at all. This man, you see, he did this. He built these, and he also built it. It's my father now that I had seen this, and this was done before his time too, you know.
Yes.
This kind of a thing. But it was he did it, and where he went or what happened, his portion of the family, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Shawnee and the father lived below here in the dear days, both of them. And the father died, and he was waked on the table. And there was some few in there for the wake, you know. The place was very small, you see.
I suppose a one-roomed house, was it? Just
one room, and there was only one room in the house, you see. The fire was at one end and the bed was at the other, and the bed was just a surround of stones.
About what? About 6 foot by 4 or something?
About 6 feet by 4, and a little wall of stones, about 9 inches wide, around this, do you see?
Like a floor bed?
Yes, if I don't know what you... Yeah. That's all. It was just an oblong thing, you
like
see.
A grave, the size of a grave.
Like the size of a grave, no, exactly. And the little wall was about 1 foot high all around it. This made his bed. And I was only once in the house. And that was all I saw. There was no bedclothes, no anything else. I suppose he lay down on this. There was a good bit of straw in it. This kind of thing, probably lay down on this. But poor Shawneen anyway, at the father's wake, sometime in the middle of the night, I suppose he had maybe a few drinks of some kind, I don't know. But he picked up the father on the table and put him sitting up against the wall. Huh?
Picked up the body.
Picked up the body. He put him sitting up against the wall, you see, and drew a few belts of a fist. You sold your pension, he said, you bloody rogue, and left your children paupers.
Very good. Ned, while we were talking there, you mentioned the wall along by the fair field. Now, the fair field in Gormastown. You must tell me about that, where it was.
It is just here. It is just the field next here. This house is built on it, on the end of the fair field now. And in my time, up to a very short time ago, there was 2 other fields there, but 'tis divided. 'Tis all let go into one now again, as it was in the time of the fair here. Yeah. The fair, I don't know how often the fair was held here and that kind of a thing, but it's quite a long time ago.
Yes, it was twice a year.
Maybe it was now. It wouldn't be very, very often anyway, no. I know that.
But at that stage, it would have been one big field, I suppose, with this house and where we're sitting tonight. You told me one time there was a house here.
There was another house here. This house is built almost on the site of another one where my family lived years ago. Yeah. And they moved from here then down to the house where I was raised. It was built newly then to be back in the...
About 1900, God,
it to the 1800s. Oh, no, 1800, 1830s, sometime that way I think it would be built there. The only knowledge I have of that is that I heard my father to say that his father brought the cradle from here down across the fields to the new house.
A big move, I suppose, at that time.
A big move, of course, and I needn't tell you it was a cradle. I suppose you wouldn't know what a cradle is now.
I do, yeah.
But that's the way.
That's a homemade one, anyway, I'm sure.
Oh, sure, they were all homemade, or the best of them were made by the local carpenter, you know, and that kind of a thing, you see. But that was the case. But sure, I suppose the principal thing about the fair field was it was there the time of the faction fights in Ireland, which would be back in the 1830s in or about.
Yes.
1820s, 1830s, and maybe longer in parts of the country and that kind of a thing, you see. But after every fair here, there was a big fight here. The 2 crowds came in, the Corawats and the Shanavis. They collected together and the fight started and this kind of thing. Oh, it was said there was people killed here.
On the field?
On the field, in the fighting, you see, and this kind of thing. The fights were, they were more than fun, I can tell you that. Yeah. It was reported that there was at least one man killed here. And there was a story I heard. Local family, supposed to be a local family at the time. He was having a fight with...
Neighbouring family.
A neighbouring family, probably. His opposition anyway, but this other man was having the best of him anyway in the fight, and this fella lost his stick. They use sticks in these fights, do you see? Yeah. And this fella had lost his stick, and the best thing he could get then was a youngster was near him, and he picked him up and held him over his head. The poor youngster got the blow of the other fella's stick.
Savage, like.
Savage, next to savagery. It was next to savagery.
Tribal warfare, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know what was the cause of it. I know how I was told how it started, but how it finished in was a different thing. You see.
Yeah, well, that's good.
I heard it said, and by some historian or other, that it was what was left of Sarsfield's army in Limerick. Sarsfield was beaten in Limerick, you see.
Right, yeah.
And he went to Spain after that. And some of his army went with him, while there were others that didn't go. Ireland was still under the foreign rule, and these soldiers did their best to train the local men to fight with swords and this kind of thing, which was the weapons then.
At that time,
do you see? And instead of using the proper weapons, they had to use sticks.
Right, they wouldn't have swords.
They couldn't get them, you see, this kind of a thing. The next thing was, it turned into a faction fight, you see, instead of, they did continue to practice for a long time, you see. Some of them were very active with them too in fighting, you see. But the most of them, they turned them into an ordinary faction fight and this kind of a thing, killing one another for nothing.
Yeah, developed into feuds between landlords and that type of thing.
No, not the landlords. No, there was nothing like that in it. You see, it was just the way of thinking between the local fellas.
From one parish to another.
From one parish to another, or maybe from one locality to another, and this kind of a thing. You see, one of them joined the Corawats, and another joined the Sheriffs, and there were two different. There was two different bunches then. There was the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds, you know, I mean, these mixed up in them and all this kind of... The 4-year-olds wouldn't fight with the 3-year-olds and this kind of a thing, you see. But that's all right. That was the bad part. But on one occasion, this was a terrible thing now here in this field, in the fair field, you see. It became a terrible thing here. And, of course, the government at the time, which were the English, they thought they'd put a stop to it. And the army were in Cahir at the time, inside in the barracks in Cahir now. There's a couple of factories there now.
Right.
And the army were stationed there. A regiment of horse over there. And this day, a lot of them came out here to break up all this fighting here and all the rest of it. And the two crowds are fighting away in their best till they saw the army. And the next thing was the two crowds joined together and they beat the soldiers down to very near Ballybacon Chapel. And there the soldiers threw their bayonets, of course. And that stopped the fight.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
You see, this kind of thing.
Yeah. But that happened here in was it the field we're actually
sitting in now, you see. I had this house built here back in 1939 or something that way it was built here. But
cause a lot of steeped in history, like, really, isn't it? The area.
There's a share of it around, you know. There's a share. Sure, good Lord, every place that has a certain amount of this old history going with it.
Yeah, I want to ask you about. We'll say when you were young lad, did you go to Mass in Ballybacon or Arfinnan?
Oh, Ballybacon always. Ballybacon was our parish.
Because you were in the parish. Yeah,
we were in the parish of Ballybacon then, and Ballybacon was. I'll tell you, when we were youngsters going to school, two of us were sent off on the Sunday morning to Mass in Ardfinnan at 8:30. And the first Mass, you see. And the second Mass then was in Ballybacon at 11 o'clock. The rest of the family went down across the fields there. And there was people, you'd see people coming across every field. You went from one place to another, you'd surely see someone else in another field going to Mass.
Yeah, everybody
as the song says, through field and road and ditch to Mass when Sunday morning smiles.
Very good, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things, is the fact that there is such a lot of mess pits across the fields, from Gormanstown even to Ballybacon Church. So the people did go to the parish church.
They did. Nearly everybody around, you see. And the 11 o'clock Mass was suitable. People had a rest in the morning, or they had time to work in the morning, do the farm jobs and this kind of a thing, such as milk the cows, look after the cows and feed them and whatever else was to be done, you see. The few jobs like that. Rush them in the morning and then prepare for Mass.
Yeah. Now, getting away from, we'll say that was a Sunday. Sunday night, I want to ask you about. Was there any dancing locally, or would you have gone to dances? I mean, there were no pictures, was there?
Sure. I'll tell you, before my time now, it was only all dances in houses. Well, now, I don't know much about that now. I can't remember. I don't remember it at all. But in my time, there was dance halls around. There was a dance hall in Ardfinnan. There was a dance hall in Cloheen. There was a dance hall in Gortonbridge. And at the time of the Black and Tans, there was a dance hall down here in the old school.
Yeah, that's one I was going to, because my father told me he danced in the school opposite John Ryan's.
That's right, he did, he could have.
The McGraths played there, he said.
The McGraths, Barna Highland. They were the great band in the locality at the time.
Is that right? Yeah.
They were 4 melodians.
Right.
And I remember I was down there one night outside. It was only just a kind of a, I don't know how you call it, just something that started up there, you know, and that got away somewhere or other, you know, this kind of, it was fun for the night, that was it.
Yeah.
But on one occasion I was down there with somebody, and it was a stranger in the locality with me anyway, whoever it was. And the dance was going on inside, but either of us didn't go in. And we were listening to the music. And what he said is, whoever is there, he says he's a good fiddler.
Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
it happened that I learned the day after who the fiddler was. He was a lad playing in a mouth organ. And that was the case.
Yeah.
He thought it was a fiddler playing.
It was a mouth organ.
It was done well,
But
you know.
those dances again, would they have gone on till late hours or what?
Oh God, there was in Gormanstown while the dance was there now in the school. One night it was an all night, and the next night it was a Cinderella. Do you know this kind of thing? Every second night. You see?
Yeah, yeah.
The all nights lasted until 6 or maybe 7 in the morning, and the Cinderellas lasted till 2 or 3. The Cinderella was supposed to be a half night's dancing, which was finished at 12, all right, you see. But
What would it cost you to go into it?
oh God, I suppose, I don't know, maybe a bob or something, I forget now what it was. But it wasn't much anyway.
Something very small.
Oh, it was small, you know, and that kind of a thing. The next thing was then, the McGraths became famous as a band, you see, and there used to be a practice dance there every Sunday night. Any night there wouldn't be an all night, it was a practice dance.
If they had nowhere else to play, like.
That's it, you see. Oh, but they were there, engaged for there always, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way.
Would you have gone down to Athlone then from time to time?
I would have gone down to, oh Lord, yes, the central hall in Ardfinnan, but the central hall was after that.
It's the crossroads.
It was after the
It
garment.
was after Gormanstown. Gormanstown now was the time of the trouble.
Right.
Oh,
was it
God.
dangerous going dancing that stage? Like, would you?
It was and it wasn't. At that time, that was the worst time now when the dance was in Gormanstown School, because I'll tell you, the tans were just finished here.
Yeah.
And the talks were going on in England about the settlement and this
Yeah,
kind of a thing,
true.
you see. And on this occasion, it seems that Ireland had got the Free State at this time. Now, I was a young lad, what would I be, 14, 15 years or 16 or something that way I was. But I wasn't actually going to the dances, and there was a big all-night dance in the school in Gormanstown. And the next thing was 6 o'clock in the morning, it was getting bright and all this kind of, some of the IRA were there now and this kind of thing. And the next thing was there was shots fired and flying around everywhere around the locality. The lads were there and they a bit drunk and this kind of a thing. But the next thing was the army were around. Where they came from, either it's a Care or Clonmel, I don't know where they came from. This would be the Free State Army now, you see. But I know that the lads were
They were running.
the lads were going in all directions when
On the army appeared.
the army appeared, you know, and this kind of thing.
Would you remember the time we say Liam Lynch was shot? Have you any memories of that?
I remember the shots, hearing the shots. I remember the shot that killed him.
Yeah, there's only a few shots and all, anyway.
There would be maybe 10 or 12 or maybe more,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing.
Was it frightening, do you think? You know, was there a sense of fear or were you...
It wasn't, because it was too far away from us, you see. You can take it as a border fly. It is, I suppose, close to 4 miles, I suppose, to where he was shot up on the mountain, you know. That kind of thing. But I'll tell you what I was actually doing was picking stones in the field just down there now, next field down.
Yeah.
Myself and my brother were picking stones there and picking them into Das's cart, you see. There was hay to be taken off the field later on, you see, and the stones were being picked so that they wouldn't block the machine, you see.
Right, yeah.
So we heard the racket down the mountain, and this kind of, we didn't think it was so far away though, because we had a quiet plane. And there was a volley of shots, a number of shots went off all together, and then a few seconds after was the one shot, you see. So that's all we heard about it. The next thing was we heard that Liam Lynch was shot out the mountain. Of course, we didn't know what to think. It was Liam Lynch a rogue or was he a what? At the time, we knew very little about him and that kind of thing.
Was politics a thing that was never spoken about much, even when you would be up at Keys? We said that...
At Keys, there was no such thing
Yeah,
as talk of politics.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? There was no
The troubles wasn't mentioned at all.
They wouldn't mention. Of course, Keys would be after the trouble anyway, you
Yeah.
see.
Oh, well, yeah.
This kind of a thing.
But even when you were a young lad, like it was there, but nobody talked about it.
It was there, but nobody talked about it. And even at the time of the tens, now you didn't talk politics because you didn't know who you were talking to.
Yeah, who was listening to you, yeah.
Or who was listening or what was saying. I'll give you an instance of it. My family weren't ever interested in politics to any great extent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The father was there and the mother was there, and they were a kind of past the age of taking an active part in it, you see. They had their opinions and this kind of a thing, you see.
Yeah.
But they weren't and we were too young. I was, I suppose, I must be in about 14 or something that way. But the next thing was, the local leaders of the IRA got to know that our place was fairly safe for them, you see. So, the next thing was, they were sent on any time they wanted a quiet place for a sleep or this kind of thing. They came onto our place and they knocked at the door, and the father got dressed and would go and open the door and he'd see who was there and tell him, come in, no more about it. There was one night I remember, he opened the door and 6 big hefty young men barged in, each one of them carrying a rifle, stacked it up against the corner at the fire machine, and they all had a meal, and the next thing was they got a pack of cards and started playing.
Yes.
You see, there was an ambush down in, I think, Blackcastle, or is it Blackcastle or Castle Blake or somewhere that way, but
There was an ambush in Castle Blake near
Castle
Green.
Blake, yes, that's it. Well, it was there they were, and there were some of them shot there too. I think by the Free State.
They were on their way back anyway. Those lads, were they locals? I mean,
They were going there for the
on their
ambush.
way.
They were on their way for the ambush there.
But they wouldn't have been local lads, would they? They just
We didn't know. Nobody knew any of them.
Yeah.
Nobody knew any of them. But they were all grand, pleasant lads now, full of fun and all the rest of it, while they were below the house until sometime they left, I think sometime in the morning at 1 or 2 o'clock, that kind of thing.
But they're travelling on foot, were they?
They were travelling on foot. These were the IRA now.
Yeah.
But previous to that, I suppose it was before the place got the name of putting them up and this kind of a thing, you see. Now I couldn't say how often they were there, but there was lots of fellas there. There was one man from Burncourt area, and I know he spent well over a month there at our place, you see. And he is happy as Larry around the place, you see, and he was one of the very top heads of the IRA at the time, you see. But that's beside it. 'Twas like that. And the next thing was, one morning, before anyone was up, the racket was outside. The military were out from care. They pulled the locks out of the doors, the outside doors and all the rest. And when they had all that done, they knocked at the door. The father got up and opened the door for them. They came in and searched the whole place. We were all youngsters inside in bed. They didn't interfere with us, but they searched the house, the rest of the house, and all.
Look, you know,
The boy had been sending them word, you see, whoever it was.
Yeah.
You see, they had got word of it that the IRA were coming and staying at our place.
But you were lucky. If anybody had been there that
Oh,
night.
sure, good Lord, if they were there, they had no chance of getting away. The place was surrounded, completely surrounded them. Ever before there was a tittle. Then they put I know my mother, I suppose, maybe she was looking out the door or something. And what she saw was, there was a hasp in the barn door, you see, with a lock on it, and
Yeah. Who can I?
hook and eye, yes. You put the bayonet down inside it and pulled it out completely.
Fairly rootless, like
Yes, ruthless, and no, didn't bother about what they did or the way they did it or anything else.
Oh, and
That's
that's,
the way.
but then, of course, you had to be more careful from then on. So.
Oh, sure, we had, but soon after that, you see, the Tens were beaten, the British soldiers were withdrawn, and after that, our place wasn't used much by the IRA. You know, that kind of thing. It had the name, I suppose, before that, and
As a safe
they
house.
didn't come to us. Yes, as a safe house in the time of the Tens it was.
That's
used mostly.
Good. Getting away from that, I meant to ask you about the kind of music there was at the dances. I meant to ask you about, was it all, would you say, like melodeons and all Irish, like waltzes and that?
It was. what you had was waltzes, foxtrots, one steps, two steps, all this kind of a thing, you see. You would have a set in maybe or tune during the night, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And things went on then for a number of years. And this was getting a terrible grip on the country, the one step, the foreign dances.
Right, yeah.
And the local priests, at least, whether there was more through the country or not, they went about it to get the dancers to turn on to the Irish dances.
The GAA working again, I suppose.
Maybe the GAA, but I wouldn't think it was the GAA so much as the clergy.
Yeah.
They didn't fancy the foreign dances, you see. And they pressed the people to dance the old Irish dances and this kind of a thing. And down in Gortonbridge, the Irish dance was started there and continued there. And there was a crowd there every Sunday night. You may be sure you were sweating in a few minutes there. It was terrific. All sets, chatisses, waltzes, all this kind of thing, all the old Irish dance, and it was great. And I was down there for years. Every night I went down there.
Could you remember anyone that taught the dancing down there in the beginning?
There was nobody there. I don't know how it was. The old people, even a lot of the old people came in and danced the old sets there. They were glad to have the old sets to dance there.
Yeah.
Do you see? This kind of a thing.
The tradition living on.
The tradition is just carrying on. The older people took it up and dancing. And I needn't tell you, the youngsters picked it up quick. Do you know, that kind of a thing? But it was great.
Remind me, the ball alley. Did you ever play handball down there, were you?
Not in the ball alley, but I saw it play there.
Did you, yeah?
I did.
The old ball alley.
Yeah, of course, that was too far away from me to go.
It would have been, of course.
Yeah.
So, there's no ball alley in Gormastown?
Oh, there was never. The only place we played ball in Gormastown was at the end of the schoolhouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poor Mr. Marsh used to be wild over. The next thing was when the opportunity offered, and he got a couple of lorry loads of gravel and spread it all over. It's still to be seen there. So that you couldn't
hop the ball.
Hop a ball there, you know.
But I want to ask you about going to school. You were talking about Mr. Marsh, schoolmaster, and Mrs. Marsh. But how would you have learned in your time? I mean, it wouldn't be like the children learn today. Would you have learned with agricultural things? Because
no,
just reading, writing, arithmetic.
Just writing, arithmetic, reading, all that kind of a thing. Now you see, there was a time when we had to learn health and we had to the you know.
Yeah, what did you learn? You said?
We had to learn drill, army drill, how to form force and all this kind of a blooming old thing, you see.
Why was
this
that?
was during the Great War now, when they saw all the youngsters being soldiers later on, you see. This
yes,
kind
they were training you to be British soldiers.
The government, this was the Board of Education or whatever it was, or this for the youngsters. They had to learn all this kind of a thing, you see, the barrack yard drill for soldiers, this kind of a thing.
Hoping that you'd get a liking for it, I suppose.
That's it, you see. I don't know, keeping fit or so. I don't know what is the idea of it, you know.
Yeah.
Afterwards, then it did turn to a kind of keep fit thing, the ordinary drill. You have it now for.
Talking about the priest, just remind me, was there much religion taught in the national schools when you went to school first?
There would be about a half an hour every day before we were left out to play.
Yeah.
We had to do a half an hour's religion, prayers, catechism, Bible, you know, this kind of a thing, you see, and you had to have this off by heart. You may be sure you had to have this off by heart for the inspector when he came.
Was it important that you'd know it when the religious inspector would come, like, you know, you had to have the...
You had to have it off by heart. And he asked you a question at the beginning of the Bible, he asked you another at the end, and you had to have the answers off by heart and answer them as they were in the catechism or Bible, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You couldn't give your own answer either, only what was there for you to learn.
Yeah, because it's changed now. I mean, you can now give your own idea of what's in the Bible, you know.
I know what you mean.
Oh. But at that time, I remember people telling me that you had to sort of, if it asked who made the world, you had to give the exact...
God made the world, and that was all, and no other answer would do.
Yeah.
You see, that's what I say, you had to give the answer that was there in the catechism or Bible, whatever you were studying.
And Well, say if you didn't know it when the registered inspector called, was it a very bad
You
matter?
passed. You didn't pass your exam, and you're held there in that place for another year.
So it was strict, tough.
It was strict. It was awful strict. It was awful strict on youngsters, but I don't know, somehow or other they didn't, I don't know, they didn't realise it so much, and they didn't pay so much attention to it, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, I was only a youngster then, and I didn't
And
realise that.
jumping over the wall now from the school to the model farm, that was there when you were a young fella, was it? Were lads being trained there at that stage, or was that finished?
Lads been trained for what?
In the model farm, in farming or anything, were they?
No, that wasn't done there at all. Not in my time. The model farm, as a model farm, it was all finished off then, was for years before I went to school, or before I was born even. Well, I suppose it was finished before I was born even.
Yeah. So it's just an ordinary
Just an ordinary farm,
at
yes.
that stage.
An ordinary farm, and run by an old lady.
Right.
She lived till she was over 80 years anyway. She was 84 or 5 when she died, I think. Her niece was with her there, and her niece celebrated her 100th birthday there the other day.
That's correct. Yeah, Mrs. Egan.
Mrs. Egan.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, the field next, or the field that the model farm, the house is built on, that is supposedly a church site, isn't it? Have you ever heard that?
I have, but it isn't where the house is built. It is further down.
Right. Yeah.
They had what they called the paddock there, and it is down at the end of that. There was a graveyard there anyway, and it seems there was some monastery of some kind there. Let it be big or small, I don't know what the size of it was, but there was some religious building there at that time, or previous to that, which is a long time ago.
That's the tradition, is it, locally?
That is the tradition, yes.
Yeah, and then that field has never been tilled, I believe, the one on the right of the end.
I think it is being tilled now because bulldozers and all the rest of it torn away the whole place there, you see, and there are cattle over it and tillage.
Yeah, times are changing.
Times have changed, you see, and there's no notice taken of these things now in that way,
Looking at the pump, I remember passing in there. You know the hand pump there.
I do.
Would you have got water there, like?
We did when it was to be had there.
Oh. Was there times when
it was as often out of order as it was working. This kind of a thing. The fact was, you see, that though it was too deep, the water in that is at least 45 feet down. And that's down pretty low as it is, but the water there is still 45 feet down, and I know it because I had to take the water up out of that with a bucket and a rope.
From the well?
Out of the well at the bottom of that, you see. There is a hole there, 6 feet or more, maybe 8 feet in diameter, you see, and you could let down the bucket and just take up the cover off of it and let down the bucket there. And I know that when I had to get the water there like that, I had to go and get a rope, and that was the length of it, 45 feet, and the whole lot of it barely got the bucket of water from it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another story about that.
Yeah.
We were rearing the family here at the time, and they were going to school there to Peter Marsh. I know it wasn't Peter Marsh was there at all at the time, I think. I don't know, but it doesn't matter anyway. But I remember the pump well, and what was there. And I had passed up there one day, and I saw this old cover lifted up. I suppose that evening when I came home, I asked the eldest daughter here, do they be doing that on the pump? And she said they do. And does the pump be open? I said, I do, she says. And the thought of this terrified me. A crowd of youngsters out from school, going down around there, standing around that whole hole and maybe looking into it. One little push, and they were gone into it, and that's all was there about it.
Yeah.
But I gave a whole night awake over that thought.
Ned, we skipped over the faction fights. Was there any bit more like that you'd like to add to it? We'll say like the fair field and the faction fights here.
Sure. I suppose there'll be a bit more. I'll tell you. The faction fights continue. The fellas continue to practice faction fighting, you see.
Yeah.
And there was two crowds in the locality. One would be from Gortmers, the mountain foot down there, you know, and the other would be from Newcastle. Do you see?
Yes.
And at that time, there was a what do you call in Ballybacon?
Pattern.
Pattern. There was a pattern held in Ballybacon every year, do you see? And there was mass said there for the pattern day. And it was the custom after the mass, after the pattern mass, that the Newcastle fellas came on and they'd have a fight with the Ballybacon fellas then, you see. But on this occasion, the parish priest said the mass there. And he warned them strictly, if he heard of a tittle of any kind carrying on around the church or anywhere during the day afterwards, he'd never again say a mass in Ballybacon for the pattern. So, of course, all the lads were cowed down quite a share, do you see, and he said the mass, and after the mass all the lads came out and they stood in groups outside the chapel gate and they talked and all the rest of it and this kind of it. The lads were all talking outside the chapel gate anyway, and the next thing was the shout was heard down the road, and in a short time and there was no reply. The insults started flying up the road and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Newcastle lads had come.
Yes.
And they were down the road and they taunting the Ballybacon fellas all they were able, you see, and insulting him in every way they knew. But the Ballybacon lads, there was no stir at it. They stood where they were, and of course the parish priest was a boss at that time too, you know, somebody to be dealt with. But in any case, there was no stir at him. And the Newcastle fellas continued to insult him in every way they knew how and this kind of thing. So there was no chance of starting them. And the Newcastle fellas were going back home again. And on their way home, they were passing by the old churchyard. And some of the Newcastle lads had a great idea, and he jumped in over the stile and started, and followed by the rest of the crowd, and started walloping the old tombstones inside where all the Ballybacon lads' people were buried. So that started a fight and ended the pattern and Ballybacon. Cause of course. Of course.
Of course, the priests were very much against the pattern at that time, all the priests. Not against the pattern, but against the fight.
They were against the fighting, you see. Of course, right too, you see, sure, it was ridiculous in ways. That's all they were doing, just fighting and injuring each other for no purpose, you know. No purpose
that was the reason why the pattern stopped, because of the violence. Like,
the pattern stopped then, you see. Yeah. Though I'm told it started again a year or two ago, which is a grand thing too, you know.
But it's more of a family day now rather than a
Oh, it is. It is a holiday more or less in the locality now, you know.
Ned, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, jumping back again, you mentioned about going to the dances, but I'm told, like, by a lot of old people, that the courting was a problem that time between, like, the women and the priests. They were very much against any fellas wandering around the road late at night, I think, were they?
Sure, you'd want to be very smart to find a hole. The priest could pass you by on the bicycle and well and good if he saw you and this kind of thing. Wanted you. Yeah. I was on one occasion. It wasn't around here anyway. It wasn't here. It was a few miles away. Yeah. And I was friendly with a girl. No, and that's always in it, you see. Yeah. But we were out this evening together, and I was sitting up on the top of a stone bank, if you like now, a stone wall with a clay and thrown on top of it, and she was standing in front of me, and we were talking and chatting away, grand pleasant old chat, and the priest came along the bicycle and cleared her way home. But I couldn't see that he had any reason for it anyway. Yeah. But that was the case, do you see?
But like there were stories told of priests, being out after dances and, well, is it true? Like,
it is true. They did ridiculous things, really. Yeah. They did, and there's one poor priest, God rest him, that I heard a story about. He had the Boy Scouts in the locality. Yes. He organised the Boy Scouts in the locality. And this lad, he made, what do you call him?
Chief Scout.
Yes, Chief Scout. Yeah. Do you see, and this kind of thing, and he was a saint walking around, you see, according to him, and this kind of a thing, you see. But this evening, this priest was out on this purpose on the bicycle, I see, and this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And he came along to this gate on the roadside. Now, gate going into a field and no more about it. And there was the couple standing beside the gate. You see, and take notice and all. He got off the bike and over to him. And who was there but his friend, the leader of the scouts? He got the drop of his life, sure.
Yeah, but he still hunted him, I suppose.
Oh yes, he hunted him. He cleared him away out of it, no more about it.
And would they preach about that kind of thing for Sunday? Like, was it, or would they have...
They wouldn't remark a special case.
Yeah, but
they wouldn't remark that, but they talk about it in general.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of a thing.
And were they against dances, do you think, for that reason?
They were against dances, more or less for that reason than anything else.
Yeah.
And I remember a time, the dance was going on here in the school in Ardfinnan. It was run by different parties, you know, maybe a change every few months.
Yeah.
But on one occasion anyway, this fellow asked me, would I go down to the parish priest to ask permission to have a dance in the old schoolhouse, you see. So we went down to him anyway, and we wouldn't get permission from him to have the dance there.
Why was that?
It was just his opinion, his way of looking at it, you see, that there shouldn't be a dance in the schoolhouse.
Okay.
No,
Fairly strict, yeah.
It was strict, well, they were awfully strict.
But going to the dances is something I didn't ask you about. You mentioned like that you'd have gone to Gothenburg. Like, would you have had a bicycle or would you have walked to Gothenburg? Or if you'd gone further, how would you travel?
If I had a bicycle and it was an order, I'd cycle down, but if I hadn't, I'd walk down across the fields.
And walk home again?
And walk home again.
And would there be a few going with you, or would you?
Sometimes there would be maybe 2 or 3 with me, for maybe 1 or 2 for 3 for part of the road and this kind of thing, and nobody for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
It is often I came up halfway from Gothenburg with no one at all, up through the fields, up past Ballybacon Chapel and up across.
Yeah. There was no fear in you at all? Like
No fear. I knew the pathway shut as well. I'd be lost.
Yeah.
You see, coming up there in the middle of the night, 12, 1 or 2 o'clock.
You wouldn't have had a lamp or...
Nothing at all, nothing at all.
Or what kind of lamps had the farmers even that time? The storm lamps?
Lanterns, principally. I don't know, did you ever see
With a candle inside in it, is that the
a
one?
candle inside in it, and the three windlass windows, or 4, yeah. I've been looking for one of them for years and I could never find one.
All the scarce.
Yeah, you can't get them now, you know. You can't get them.
But that was the main lamp, we'll say.
That was around the farm. Around the farm, that was the light. You see, even farmers going out and looking at cattle in the night time and that kind of thing, get the lantern and go out and see the cattle.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of a thing.
Tough going because like, there wasn't much light in that. Like, you'd be...
There was scarcely a light at all in it, sure. Scarcely a light at all, man.
Very good.
That was the way. They were tough times, they were good times, they were happy times. The people knew little, and they bothered less.
I'm going to ask you another quick fire question. Could you remember the first pictures you went and where was it? We'll say like where you sat down and there was a moving screen of pictures on it, you know, the cinema type.
The movies, the silent movies, the only ones I saw was in Ardfinnan. Your travelling companies come around, you see, and they'd have a big tent and show the pictures in it and this kind of a thing, you see. And there was one fella, their light at that time showing the pictures was gas. Something like the present bottle gas, that kind of a thing now they had. But there was one fella came along and I suppose he maybe didn't have the money very plenty. Neither had he the gas. But every night he'd let in the crowd into the hut, you see.
Yeah.
They'd all settle down inside and the youngsters scamping and laughing and fooling and this kind of thing, and he'd start to show the pictures. The picture would last maybe for 2 minutes and the next thing it was gone off. Sorry, no gas. The lad said this for a cant.
Yeah.
Sorry, no gas.
Yeah. Apart from
the first talkie I ever saw then was in Clonmel. I think it was the first one ever came there. Sonny Boy.
Going back a bit.
That's going back a bit. It's going back into the 30s, I suppose it would be. I don't know, sometime about then. I cycled in to see it. Oh, sure, the whole country went in to see Sonny Boy in Clonmel, the first talkie picture.
A marvellous thing.
Well, it was a marvellous thing then, of course, it was new.
Yeah, I want to ask you about radios. Was there any radios in the house?
Oh, God, there wasn't a radio for years, not for years afterwards. we were living here for a good number of years before we got a radio.
Yeah, they didn't come in till late in the 30s, did they? Not in the locality anyway.
God, it would be gone into the 40s certainly before we had a radio.
Yeah.
You see, I suppose we had maybe enough to do here anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
I built the house here about 1939. We got married, I think, about 1940 or sometime that way, you see. And I know that we had some of the family before we got a radio here.
Yeah.
This kind of thing.
I want to ask you about building the house. Did you build it yourself? A lot of it?
Oh, I didn't. I actually, no, I got a contractor to actually build it. I supplied the material, you know, and I got a London's contractors to build it then, you see. That kind of a thing.
Yeah. So then it was ready for you to move into when you settled down.
It was, yes. And I showed you we were married. We were married in the year afterwards and moved in. We're stuck here since.
I'd say hardly stuck is the word. Happy enough here now and then.
Ah, sure. I suppose as good as any of the rest around.
Of course. You mentioned the films and the travelling show. We'll say the travelling people who show these pictures to you. What about travelling shows or concerts? You know, that type of thing. Had you any of them coming to Finnegan?
We had. And there was a few parties that I remember coming to Ardfinnan. God, sure, I can't think of their names now. But amongst them was one of the ladies that played in Louis Dalton. Louis Dalton and his wife came to Ardfinnan. They came first with another party. I forget now what their names were. But they played it. They weren't married then, but it seems they were friendly and on the way to it. And they returned themselves sometime after that and played in Ardfinnan, Louis Dalton and the wife. And it was a nice entertainment to go and see those playing. They were great, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that Minnie, you said she became Minnie the Reardons after, I think.
She was Minnie in the Reardons. That's right, yeah. Minnie in the Reardons. That's Minnie. I called her. You see, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know her. She was Mrs. What do we call her?
Cowley.
She was Mrs. Cowley then, but
Louis Dalton.
Louis Dalton. She was Mrs. Dalton.
Yeah, that's fine. But go on and ask you about the cost of going to these things. You know, was it easy to get the money to go to them, or was it? Did you have to work at it?
It wasn't easy. I'll tell you, fellas that were working, you see, they had a few bob all the week, you know, this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, a farmer's son didn't always have the money so soft, you see, because he didn't get it.
Yeah, I was asking you, had you a certain amount of plough moss and that kind of thing?
You had to do every bloody thing in order to try and get it. You had nearly to fight for your rights in order to get money. You couldn't. Oh, you wouldn't be left go every night at all, you know. You wouldn't get money to go every night.
It was considered a waste, I suppose.
It was, of course. And,
why not? So
the other people, they didn't bother about going to these things, especially the country people.
Yeah.
They didn't bother about going to these things, you see.
But like, you'd be thinking about it for a week beforehand, so you're trying to make it.
You would. I'll tell you what you'd be doing. You'd be looking at the posters to know what was on such a night.
Yeah.
You see, and if you were told then that was going to be good, you try your best to get there.
You do something to make the money for you.
You would.
But you mentioned about couldn't want something to make money. The lady buying the apples, Keeves.
Yes.
Did you have an orchard at home yourself? Had you?
We only had. We didn't have what you'd call an orchard, though we had a small field was known as the orchard, but all was there was trees all around it, and they were cider apples, special cider apples, the same as Bulmers have them now, you see. They have fields of them, you see.
Yes.
But that's all was there of them, cider apples, and these were picked every year and brought up to Keith's to make cider of them.
Yeah, and that'd be stored at home.
That'd be stored a barrel or maybe 2 barrels of cider, then it'd be in the barn for the year. And there was a few customers around then, they came along and they sat down at these barrels maybe for hours at night and go home drunk.
Yeah.
They were friends, you see.
Yeah. What about thrashings? I want to ask you, did you have thrashings at home?
Oh God, we did, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, we did.
As a young fellow, would you be looking forward to it as a young fellow?
You would. Oh God, sure. I mean, the time of the steam engines and that, you were looking forward. It was a terrible event, you see, a steam engine coming into the place and all this kind of a thing. It was a big event. You know, this kind of. But previous to that, you see, it was the horse-powered machine was there. I remember them a few times below at my place.
Yeah.
The 6-horse machines. There was 4-horse and 6-horse machines. You know, and the 6-horse machines was the one that did the big day's threshing. The 6 horses were able to keep it going fairly well, you know, and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is often they had to change the 4 horses at dinner time. But there was only 4 horses doing it, you see,
Yeah.
this kind of thing.
Can you remember who'd have that machine? Like?
I do remember there was a family here near us, Keatings, Ned Keating. And he spent months at after the harvest, going around from one farm to another.
And where was his house now?
It was down below the school there he lived, you know, and do you know the house of the Boheen up to Nugent's entrance?
Yeah.
You know the ruin that's there now?
Yeah, the right hand side, yeah.
That's it. It was there he lived. There was a house there, and a good house. I don't know what's there now. As a matter of fact, it was there a portion of the model farm family were born and reared. They weren't born there, they were reared there.
Yeah.
The present old lady was reared there for a while.
Yeah.
Remember
But that man had a travelling engine, we'll call it, or
it
or a horse
wasn't
machine.
an engine, you see. The farmer usually had to supply the horses to remove the machine, which was carried on wheels. Now, there was a method of loading the drum, as they call it, onto one car.
Yes.
And the other car, it was a case of put the wheels under it.
Yes.
That carry the gear, do you see? And they got these moving and shafts on them then, and put a horse under them. Of course, it was easy travelling for a horse too, to take them from one farm to another. Then,
He
you know,
wouldn't
that
be
kind of
travelling very far anyways, yeah.
He wouldn't be travelling only, what, maybe a half a mile at the most, that kind of a thing.
And was there great, we'll say, neighbourliness? Everybody came in and helped you, did the
They
locals?
did. All the neighbours came in for the threshing and this kind of a thing, and they all brought their pikes along with them, and they all took up their positions and whatever they were going to be doing. This was the same in the steam engines as it was with the horsepower machines before, and every man took his own job, you see, and he'd go from one end of the parish to the other doing that job every day. The same job every day.
I'm going to ask you that. You had, we'll say, pikemen take away the straw and
You
good men
had,
to feed.
yes. You had men then piking the sheaves to the drums and this kind of a thing. Every man his own job.
Was there a certain craft in doing everything? Was there?
There was, and then there was a few men that were good at feeding. They never did another thing, only feeding the machines, no matter what machine it was.
Yeah.
Let it be the horsepower machine or the steam thrasher or tractor machine or whatever it was. Those men, they went from one farm to another for miles, feeding the machines, yes. And that's all they get for it. That's get nothing. Well, of course they'd get their wages from wherever they were working.
Yeah.
You know, that kind
was
of a
small
thing.
enough to you anyway.
That was small. Oh, it was.
They'd be just fed
Eight
few
bob a
drinks.
week or 10 at most.
Get a few drinks and...
Get a few. Oh, sure, that was the case. The barrel of stout was everywhere.
Yeah. And would there be a dance in the house that night when the thrashing was finished?
Usually, if they could spare the old bucket of stout,
Yeah.
there'd be a few girls called in from the neighbourhood, and they'd have a few old sits and this kind of a thing.
Yeah. The neighbouring girls, would they come in like and help with cooking the food?
Oh, they would. Oh, they would.
The
And
pig's head or whatever.
if there was a girl or a couple of girls in a house, you see, they came into the neighbours and did the dinner. There was a big pot of potatoes and a big pot of meat and cabbage and all the rest of it. And a table then, they would, what'd be 20 feet long. You know, 2 or 3 tables end to end along, you know, in the big kitchens.
And ladies, yeah.
All they were all prepared. They were all there preparing, you see. One of them going around with a plate of meat, another going around with a plate of cabbage, another with a basin of potatoes, and this kind of thing.
Yeah. Would you be inclined to take a drop of the porter yourself that time? Would you be
I did too, take
dip
it.
into the bucket?
Yeah. You didn't, you see. There was a man going around at the bucket, and he had the mug or cup or whatever he had going around, and he gave you your share and no more about it.
How was pubs like in our film, we say, when you were fairly young, like, you know, when you went to a drink at all, or were there many going to the pubs that time?
There were more going to the pubs then than there are now, really. I'd say there was more drink then than there is now, you see, because a lot of them went there every evening.
Yeah.
Do you know, the old porter was cheap. I remember porter down to twopence, you know, twopence a pint. Because money was terrible scarce then, as I said there a while ago.
Yeah.
A man earned 8 bob a week or 10 bob a week, that kind of a thing. The money was scarce, but prices were down to.
Yeah. There were more fellas going for a drink though at night, like that's the only entertainment.
There were more of them went into the pub to sit down and talk and this kind of thing. Of course, they would spend the night maybe over a pint.
Yeah. Well, just remind me that you wouldn't see many women in pubs at that time.
None whatever. A woman daren't enter a pub. And if there was any party where there was a woman, they didn't go into the pub, they went into what they called the push. It was just inside the door, a small little room was there just beside the bar. The snug or the push, they called it.
Yeah, that was it.
And that was it.
That was as far as a woman was allowed.
That was as far as a woman was allowed. And it was a daring woman that had a bottle of stout then.
Go on.
Yeah, even in there.
Yeah, it was just not done and that was it.
It wasn't done, you see. It wasn't for a woman to take anything like alcohol at all.
And did they accept it, you think? Like, were they happy enough at it? Or was
They were, because they didn't know anything else. Nobody did it. No women did it, you know. This kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they waited for their men to come home drunk.
And that was usual, I suppose.
That was the usual thing. You could see the women sitting in the car there outside the pub door and the husband inside drinking. And they were as good humoured about that as if they were enjoying themselves.
May I ask you, as things got better in the land, we said, would you have started off with an S trap or a G trap kind of thing? You know, to go to the village or to go for shopping or farm?
I'll tell you at home now. I tell you, principally going to mass and funerals were the principal journeys for the traps, the horse and traps.
Yes.
Do you know, this kind of a thing? And I remember that for years we were big lads, I don't know what age we'd be, and we used to run down across the fields, and the father and mother as well, go down across the fields to Ballybacon, do you see? Then later on, I suppose they got a little bit better off, and they got a trap. And they had a horse, of course, themselves. There was 2 horses there always, you see. And drive to Ballybacon Mass and a horse and trap.
And would you have gone down Ladies Abbey, or would you go down around by...
No, down around Gormanstown and Doherty's,
yeah.
around the area, you see. That was the usual route, considered the shortest.
Yeah, it wasn't amazing because Finn is probably nearer to you, but of course it was a different parish.
The parish made the difference.
Yeah, yeah.
The parish made the difference. If you went down to Ardfinnan and made your Christmas subscription there, it should hardly be acknowledged. You know, you kind of had to pay in your own parish and this kind of a thing, you see.
But the stations, did you have stations?
Oh, the stations then, twice a year, in the different houses in the parish, in the locality.
Was that a big occasion for you?
Oh God, sure it was. Sure, at that time, all the neighbours, there was somebody from every house in for the stations, you see. Yeah. There was confessions and Holy Communion and Mass and all in the house then, you see. The priest's breakfast, the big event, an awful big event. Half the people that were there were toasting the bread at the fire for the priest.
I couldn't ask you that, but would there be big preparations beforehand for the priest coming?
There would. The whole place was whitewash. Every place around, inside and out, had a fresh coat of whitewash for the stations and this kind of thing. And I remember afterwards I was working on a job, and like that I went all over the place and gave it a coat of whitewash and this kind of a thing. And the boss was a very humorous man, and this fella came on anyway and he saw the place all whitewashed and he remarked, oh, we're going to have the stations.
We're talking about the priest and the preparations at the breakfast. Would there be, would somebody particularly have to sit beside the priest?
Oh, there would. The parents usually. And if the 2 wouldn't be there, the father would be there, and he'd have company from some of the other neighbours, such as the parents in the other families or someone, maybe one of them or 2 or whatever number of it, where they'd be there, you see. They'd be brought along to the breakfast table with the priest. And this took an hour for the breakfast, and the rest were down in the kitchen having their breakfast and this kind of a thing.
But the priest's breakfast was something special.
Oh Lord, it was a big event, you know. Oh God, it was.
What about getting ready from, like, what would you normally have? I suppose an egg at that stage?
Oh, an egg or a rasher or a boat or, do you know, this kind of a thing. But he usually got a good breakfast.
Toast and that.
Toast, everything done.
How would you toast it? To open fire?
They had to toast it in the open fire, but during the mass was usually in the kitchen then, you see, at the kitchen table. It was raised up on chairs, you know, and this kind of thing to the proper height.
I saw that, a chair pushed in at each end.
A chair pushed in at each end of the table, you see, and this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And while the mass would be going on, then there'd be somebody in the house near the fire. The kettle would be on, or maybe two kettles would be put boiling there. But you couldn't stay near the fire. The fire would be roaring, there'd be a roaring fire there for everything. To boil the kettles and prepare the cheese and all this kind of a thing. And afterwards was a big red fire then for toasting the bread. And everyone that was in the kitchen had a fork and I cut a toast, cut bread on it to toast it.
Helping themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a big occasion, we say.
Oh,
when you were young fella, you know,
it
wasn't
was a great occasion, you know, for everybody in the house. It was a great occasion.
to have mass said in the house. It was important, was it? To the
Oh, it
old
was. Oh, it was. And, you know, that was a special mass. That was a mass that all the neighbours attended. And then you see the people often had a mass of their own for themselves. They'd have a mass. They'd have the parish priest or curé or someone else in to have a mass of their own in the house and invite some of the neighbours in. It was the same thing then, you see.
That's one
big
of the
event.
Was that the station's a big event. What about some of the customs that they have? It just came to mind to me. Did you have the going out on Nave with the holy water? Was that done in yours?
Oh God, it was. There's often I saw it done Easter water.
Yeah.
Into every house and out into every field and all, and shake the Easter water on them.
Would you have to go to the corners of the field, or would you just do it to shaking all the gate? Like
I don't know, anyhow, I used to see it on, yes, shake it around, just go into the field and shake stuff with the holy water and back again into the next one, into the houses and that kind of a thing.
But it was done every year without fail?
Regular, every year on May Eve.
Yeah.
May Eve was the time. This was the time when the what do I call him? How will I describe him?
It was a custom anyway.
It was.
It was a pishot, was it?
It was to some extent, but it was to prevent pishogues.
Oh.
There were people at the time, they were able to use some charms or other. I don't know what way they did it, you see, but they were able to stop and take the butter from their neighbouring farmers and this kind of a thing, and it was to prevent that. That was done.
Yeah. Did you hear, when you were a young lad now, did you hear of that happening?
I didn't hear of any case of it locally, do you know, that kind of thing, but I was told of it happening, that this was what this was done for.
And putting eggshells and drills and that, is there or something? There were all kinds of customs like that.
There was, but it was only in late years that I heard of one case of that was reported, and I wouldn't give that credit at all.
Yeah, it just mightn't be.
I don't think it was correct. It was they were possibly found there. Just they got there by accident.
Exactly.
No, that kind of a thing.
Another thing was with the customs that I've had to come across was people, we'll say, who died in the house. Had they somebody local usually to lay out people who died in the house?
In lots of places there were people they were considered good enough to do it. They might have done it before or that kind of a thing, you know, women usually, you see, this kind of a thing. They'd be asked along to wash the corpse and all this kind of thing. This is all done in hospitals now, you see. But they'd be asked along to lay out the corpse, that they call it, you see, and this kind of a thing. And no doubt about it, they did it well, if you could give them that praise.
Yeah, it's possible. But there were certain people, we say, even in your locality who did that.
They were in every locality, you see. You see, there was no such thing as sending them to hospital at that time.
Yeah.
Do you see, everybody died at home. You know, this kind of thing, died in their own home, this kind of thing. It was there the funeral was and everything else. They were removed to maybe the church the following day for mass and burial, and that was all, you see. Sometimes they were kept in the house for dead for 2 days before they were buried, you know. This kind of thing.
But it was always the customers to keep them one night in the house.
Oh, one night anyway, you see, yeah.
Oh, no, you sit up all night, somebody
sit up all night, yeah.
Sit up, that was, but there was none of this cut all cleaning or anything when you were a young fellow, were there? Like people didn't cry, there weren't women who came in.
There wasn't in my time, that was all finished and done with, you know, it was. That wasn't there in my time at all. I never heard anything like that going on. And I was at many a week, as they called them.
Yeah, all-night session.
An all-night session, it was.
That's grand. Now, what about when they were laid out? Had they a particular way of doing it? Like, you know, I've heard that they always face the south or something like the east. Did you ever hear of that? No.
No, not so. Not in the laying out. They were laid out in their habit. There was a brown
Like the monks have it, is it?
yes, well, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. It would be something similar. Cover the body completely, and there was a big cross there in the front of it, and this kind of brown in colour. It was much the same as considered much the same as the brown scapular. No, that was the reason. Yeah.
And
Some of the people had this bought and blessed before they died at all, and when they were